Now, I wonder if these fish look at each other's shells and say, don't you think she's kind of fat? Because that's what we do.
Hi, my name is Kasia, and today I'm going to give you a very abridged history of beauty standards from the early 1900s all the way until now. Now, I won't really focus on biological standards of beauty like facial averageness and symmetry, because that's a whole other topic, and this video is already long enough as it is. Our perception of beauty is molded by changes in society and often reflects what is going on in our social political culture. So I believe that beauty standards that society dictates to us are arbitrary, silly, and very often fleeting. The voluptuous figure of the Baroque era and the very slim figure of the 90s heroin chic decade were equally desired and admired by the public in their time. There is no body ideal that will stay on trend forever, so why are we chasing and trying to conform to the latest beauty trends that society spits out at us? I also want to add that most of these standards were perpetuated by Hollywood and unfortunately have been centered around Eurocentric features due to the West's history of colonization and racism. My favorite new YouTuber, Khadija Mbo, made a fantastic video about this, and I'll link it in my bio below. You should definitely check it out. Beauty is often credited to the eye of the beholder, but we've been conditioned to see it through the eyes of what society dictates to us. As I said a little earlier, the beauty standards and ideal body type often reflect what is going on in the world's cultural landscape. In January of 1901, Prince Edward VIII was crowned King of England, and with that, we entered the Edwardian era of fashion and culture. When Queen Victoria was the reigning monarch, she symbolized what most fashionable women wanted to be. She was very reserved, conservative, and proper, and that was reflective in the constrictive silhouettes of Victorian fashion and the dark colors women wore. By the way, I'm mostly talking about the upper class women here. With King Edward's reign came the more relaxed tea-style dresses that were lightweight, flowy, and could come in an assortment of pastel colors. Women now wanted to be more modern and free, and these ideals were embodied in the Gibson Girl style. The Gibson Girl was basically the 1900s version of the Kardashians, as she was the image that most girls in Edwardian society aspired to look like. She was created by Charles Dana Gibson and was meant to challenge another image of womanhood that was gaining popularity called the New Woman. The New Woman was progressive. She was a suffragette who wanted to reform the way women were treated in society. The Gibson Girl was a tamer version of that, as she was illustrated to be more carefree, gentle, and casual instead of quote-unquote aggressive woman fighting for her rights. She was the cool girl. The characteristics of a Gibson Girl included a voluptuous body with a tiny waist that would form an S-shaped silhouette. To achieve this look, women wore swan-billed corsets and fluffy blouses to fill out their bust line, along with floor-length skirts. Women would wear their hair piled up on their head and had delicate features and full lips. She was often drawn cycling through the streets because women were also encouraged to be athletic. In a way, this ideal was basically a way to trick women into thinking the cool and fashionable woman would never be a suffragette, as a Gibson Girl was never political. Like the Gibson Girl, the body ideal of the flapper also came about due to changes in society and the political climate. Flappers were a generation of young women after World War I who wanted to challenge and break out of the Roaring Twenties social norms. Women were given the right to vote in the United States on August 18, 1920. With this came a change in the silhouettes and body ideals that were deemed fashionable, completely opposite to the Gibson Girl. Flappers wanted to have silhouettes that were slim, with little to no curves, and their dresses were loose and flowy. Instead of puffing out their chests, they aspired to completely flatten that area and would sometimes bind their chests to achieve that look. Their dresses were often hemmed at the calf and sometimes at the knee, but showing the knee was still viewed as quite scandalous and promiscuous. They also cut their hair into bob cuts and wore makeup like heart-shaped red lipstick, blush, and eyeliner, which was a direct contrast to the subdued, fresh faces of the Gibson Girl. Women Women took control of their bodies, and as they gained more rights in society, they also physically celebrated that they no longer had to be prim and proper to be considered a lady. Women had to take a lot of stereotypically masculine jobs during World War I, and when men returned from the war, they did not want to surrender their new freedom and wanted to continue working. Louise Brooks is an example of a famous flapper who helped popularize the fashion. So in just 20 years, the way we looked at a woman's body completely changed in almost every way, and I think this is a clear indication of why beauty standards that come from the media are so trivial and subjective. Let me put Louise Brooks and Camille Clifford side by side. Was Camille Clifford any less beautiful now that standards had changed in the 1920s? No. The pinup era is one of the most popular and well-known body ideals as it became popularized when Hollywood films became more accessible to general audiences. Many people believe that this look originated in the 1940s and 50s, but a lot of people say that the Gibson Girl was the original version of this ideal, though it was far more modest. The Great Depression had ended in 1933, and the average woman was looking for a way to feel glamorous and elegant again. The pinup girl look was the perfect escape, and it became popularized by Hollywood starlets who would wear bright red lipstick, curled hair, and figure-hugging outfits. The key to this image was to look soft with rounded curves and not have too much muscle definition. It once again was almost the exact opposite of the 1920s flapper, where women were vying for a lovely straight silhouette. Gil Elvgren was a very famous pinup artist, and he created artwork that illustrates what the ideal woman looked like in his eyes. The pinup era is interesting to analyze because it was both sexually empowering to women, but also pandered to the male gaze. Posters of pinup girls were used as morale boosters and were often given to the American Army to distract them from the war and as a reminder of the women they were fighting for back home. Many Hollywood actresses would travel overseas to provide wartime entertainment. Betty Grable was known as the woman with the $1 million legs, and this photo of her was allegedly in the hands of over 5 million government-issued soldiers. Another actress who traveled overseas was none other than Marilyn Monroe, who traveled to Korea to entertain the troops in 1954. Marilyn is usually one of the first images people think of when thinking of the pinup body image, as she fits the ideal perfectly. There was a voyeuristic portrayal of women in this era, where men were able to get a glimpse of a woman's body, but it was meant to seem accidental. An example of this is Marilyn Monroe in The 7-Year Itch, in the famous scene where her dress accidentally blows up from the breeze from the subway. This was supposed to be an oops moment of a beautiful woman accidentally revealing something that the public doesn't normally get to see. There was this weird culture where women were drawn or photographed in revealing poses, but it was done to look accidental. In a way, this took away the woman's power or agency, because anytime they appeared sexy, it was made to seem that they didn't mean to be. This was all done so that they could still be considered classy, because God forbid if a woman was sexy on purpose. Other actresses that were popular in this era include, but are not limited to, Elizabeth Taylor, Rita Hayworth, Jane Russell, Eartha Kitt, Hedy Lamarr, and Doris Day. So just like the shift from the flappers to the pinup ideal, the pendulum swung in the opposite direction in the 1960s and 70s, and the media was no longer idealizing the Jessica Rabbit body type. Are we starting to see a pattern here? There was a new body ideal in town, and that was established by the growing popularity of models like Twiggy and Jean Shrimpton. These fashion icons had an androgynous look, slim hips, and small busts. There was also a shift in the way clothes were meant to fit. Don't get me wrong, there were still icons like Brigitte Bardot and Claudia Cardinal with itty-bitty waists, but women were opting for a more flat, straight-down look like this. There were two options for women if they wanted to be in fashion. They would still adhere to the hourglass, very curvy look, or they would opt for a more girlish, super slim look. The rise of Twiggy's popularity coincided with the hippie movement that served as a counterculture to societal norms and mainstream life. This was a time of many important social changes that were propelled by important movements such as the Black civil rights movements against racism and the anti-Vietnam War protests. With this, African Americans reclaimed their natural beauty and rejected white Western norms that were put in place for segregation and control. The afro became an important symbol of Black pride, beauty, and power.
The Black is Beautiful movement and the all-out effort to instill racial pride in Black people have done much to neutralize and offset much of the damaging effects of oppression from being Black.
This was a time of meaningful social and political progress, and it simultaneously brought positive change to the beauty ideals of the time. African American artists such as Jimi Hendrix, Diana Ross, Billy Preston, Sly Stone, and many others rocked their natural hair and were trailblazers in shifting toxic societal conventions and Western limitations of beauty. Additionally, women were now beginning to shift from being viewed as strictly housewives to entering the workplace and didn't want to be forced into uncomfortable clothing and extravagant hair and makeup. Dresses that featured the drop waist and empire waist became very popular along with other more relaxed silhouettes. From what I can see, two hairstyles were popular at the time, the pixie cut or long and loose straight hair. They also wore dramatic black cat liner, pale shades of eyeshadow, and light lipstick. A pivotal moment in fashion occurred on October 30th, 1965 on Derby Day when Jean Shrimpton was in attendance at Flemington Racecourse. She sparked controversy when she wore a white mini dress. The Sun newspaper reported in the tabloid saying, "There she was, the world's highest paid model, snubbing the ironclad conventions at fashionable Flemington in a dress 5 inches above the knee, no hat, no gloves, and no stockings." Oh my gosh, how could she? And by the 1970s, the actress Farrah Fawcett became the embodiment of beauty with her tan skin, slim and athletic body, and fresh-faced makeup. In 1976, this photo of Farrah in a red swimsuit was taken by photographer Bruce McBroom and sold out like crazy. It is still considered the best-selling poster of all time with over 12 million copies sold worldwide. So we went from this to this in the span of 2 decades. The 1980s was the decade of fitness mania. The ideal body shifted from the very slim body type of Twiggy to the athletic and toned body of Jane Fonda. Many of the admired idols of this decade were tall, broad-shouldered, with less pronounced hips. This was the decade of aerobics classes, bodybuilding, and trendy leotards and tracksuits. As I mentioned before, Jane Fonda was a huge fitness icon, and she created workout tapes that helped women get in shape in the comfort of their homes. Instead of the pixie cut or straight fringe, women wanted big, fluffy, voluptuous hair. This was often achieved with intense teasing and hairspray, but perms also became very popular to achieve the look. And as opposed to the natural, fresh faces from the 70s, women opted for dramatic, bright neon makeup with blue, purple, and pink eyeshadow. These eyes were paired with bushy, natural eyebrows and lips that were often muted tones of pink and nude. Brooke Shields was a major beauty icon at the time and was a muse for the brand Calvin Klein. There was actually a lot of controversy for how sexualized she was at a young age, as she was only 14 when she appeared in her first ad for them. Other icons include Cindy Crawford, Naomi Campbell, Madonna, Grace Jones, Jennifer Connelly, Monty Ringwald, and Princess Diana. This was also the decade of shoulder pads, which helped women achieve a more angular, defined, and broad silhouette. This was near the end of second wave feminism, and women wanted to look professional and establish their power and authority in an environment traditionally dominated by men. This was the decade that the term power dressing was brought to the forefront of culture, and many women opted to wear power suits to put less focus on their gender and to appear less feminine in order to try to reach equity in the workplace. A great example of a woman who wore this look famously and fabulously was Grace Jones. In 1986, the Wall Street Journal published the article "The Glass Ceiling: Why Women Can't Seem to Break the Invisible Barrier That Blocks Them from the Top Job," which was the embodiment of the feminist movement at the time. Okay, so we finally hit the 90s. There were a few different body ideals advertised in the media, but I'm going to focus on the most popular and controversial one, which is heroin chic. This was the decade grunge became wildly popular and entered the forefront of mainstream media. Bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and Alice in Chains were very popular in the US, specifically with the youth, and so they had a big influence on trends. The heroin chic look was characterized by having very pale skin, dark circles around the eyes that either looked like smudged makeup or like you hadn't slept in days, thin eyebrows, a very slim and waif-like body, straight hair, and high cheekbones. The face of this look was the beautiful model Kate Moss, who became the muse for Calvin Klein's perfume ads in the 90s.
This is future editing Kasha here. Look how creepy and predatory this was.
Kate has that quality of child woman thing, which touches a nerve with men.
Can you unbutton the top button of those jeans? Now, why don't you push them down a little bit?
No, I don't think so. It's crazy to me how speaking to a girl like this and speaking about a girl like this was acceptable back then.
Other people who popularized the trend were Winona Ryder, the late Gia Karanji, and Jamie King. This look drew major controversy because many people claimed that it glamorized drug abuse and eating disorders. Former President Bill Clinton even made a statement about it, and he said,
"Just projected in fashion photos in the last few years have made heroin addiction seem glamorous and sexy and cool. And as some of the people in those images start to die now, it's become obvious that that is not true."
These comments were made because the Italian photographer who helped popularize the trend, Davide Sorrenti, died of heroin addiction at the age of 20 in 1997, and it was a time where many young starlets were romanticizing the idea of drug use. News outlets had a huge issue with this beauty ideal as it sparked many eating disorders in women who desperately wanted to look like the advertisements they were constantly bombarded with. But criticizing models and women who naturally fit into this body type was also very wrong in my opinion. Kate Moss spoke out about how she felt horrible for being blamed for the spike of anorexia cases in the country. She claims that she never endorsed eating disorders and naturally maintained her thin physique. Body shaming someone and calling them unhealthy based on their natural weight is not something that ever should be accepted. I think it really shows how detrimental showing only one body type in the media can be both for the public and the icon that is being placed on a pedestal. After the controversial heroin chic trend, the media desperately tried to change the narrative back to a body ideal that endorsed health and fitness. Still, growing up, I remember many celebrities struggling with eating disorders and body image that carried on from the late 90s. Celebrities like Mary-Kate Olsen, Lindsay Lohan, Paris Hilton, and Nicole Richie were all victims of eating disorders, and their photographs were plastered all over tabloids. In this decade, women aspired to be very slim, but also to have washboard abs that they could show off in low-rise jeans and crop tops. This is the era of our queen Britney Spears, and her image was iconic and everywhere at the time. From billboards to entertaining music videos to television performances and Super Bowl commercials, she was America's sweetheart. The Victoria's Secret fashion show was also at its peak popularity. Brazilian models such as Gisele Bündchen, Adriana Lima, and Alessandra Ambrosio donned many magazine covers, and many girls aspired to look like them. There were countless amounts of magazines that featured new fad diets, and I remember even stumbling upon videos on how to fake abs with makeup. Many women also preferred to wear their hair straight, wavy, or crimped with many layers and highlights. Actresses like Jessica Alba, Halle Berry, Angelina Jolie, and Megan Fox were the major bombshells at the time, along with singers like Rihanna and Cassie. This was also an era of intense body shaming in the tabloids, and many celebrities were shamed for their weight. Here's a clip of actress Alicia Silverstone talking about being fat shamed by paparazzi.
These really large men, I mean, and I don't mean large like tall, I mean like fat men running after me screaming fat girl. And you're like, I remember all I was so indignant about is like, look at them.
Spray tans were very popular, and the trendy makeup looks at this time were arched eyebrows, very glossy and sometimes frosty lips, colorful shimmery eyeshadow, and black eyeliner on the waterline. And the counterculture styles at the time, like the emo and scene fashion, had a grungier, edgier take on these ideals. Scene queens such as Kiki Cannibal, Brickell Bones, and Jack Vanek became very popular among teens who wanted to sport these fabulous teased fringes and alternative styles. In the mid-2000s, we saw a bit of a shift towards curves and more diversity in the media with singers like Beyonce and J-Lo. Tina Fey remarked about this time in her book Bossy Pants, where she said, "I think the first real change in women's body image came when J-Lo turned it butt style. That was the first time that having a large-scale situation in the back was part of American mainstream beauty. Girls wanted butts now, and then what felt like moments later, boom, Beyonce brought the leg meat. A back porch and thick muscular legs were now widely admired." She continued to say that though it was great to embrace these curves, it only added more to the laundry list of features women felt that they needed to be considered beautiful. And this was the beginning of us Frankensteining different body parts from all different kinds of beautiful women to create an ideal that simply doesn't exist. Now we enter the Instagram model era that we're still currently living through right now, where the beauty ideals are being set by social media influencers and reality stars like the Kardashian-Jenner family. The slim, thick beauty standard began around the 2010s, and it consists of having a large chest, tiny waist, flat stomach, wide hips, round bottom, long legs, a thigh gap, and no cellulite or stretch marks. Girls are also expected to have a chiseled face with high cheekbones, full eyebrows, a small nose, and big lips. For most people, these body ideals are very unrealistic to obtain, as even the celebrities that helped popularize this look don't truly resemble the images that they put out to the world. Recently, Khloe Kardashian demanded that an unedited photograph of her was taken off the internet and even threatened to take legal action against anyone who left the photo up because she couldn't fathom the world seeing her unedited body. I understand and completely empathize with not wanting to have an unflattering photo floating around the internet. Still, the Kardashians and Jenners have been endorsing a body ideal that they themselves can't live up to, and they breed insecurities for women all around the world. And the crazy part about it is that she looked beautiful in the photo. It was just a photo that wasn't photoshopped to oblivion. The Kardashian-Jenner family have also undergone many surgeries and procedures to achieve their looks, and instead of owning up to that, they promote unhealthy practices for weight loss to young women, such as skinny teas and appetite suppressant lollipops. From the constant pressure to look perfect, social media has led to many cases of body dysmorphia in young women, as many girls have been altering their image with filters and using Photoshop to change their skin, snatch in their waist, and change other parts of their body to look quote-unquote perfect. As I've demonstrated throughout this video, the truth of the matter is that beauty standards change at a rapid pace, and throughout history, we have celebrated a variety of body types. As a species, we aren't meant to resemble one person, and each of us has our own unique qualities that make us beautiful. If there's one positive thing that 2020 has brought us, it is the push for a more diverse spectrum of beauty and body acceptance. Women have been ditching their makeup and opting to embrace their natural beauty while at home, and at times, social media has been used as a tool for good, as we slowly see a movement of body positivity on platforms like Instagram and Twitter. But we still have a long way to go. Luckily, more and more companies are beginning to include models of all shapes and sizes in their ads, and there's been a major push for unedited photos in commercials and advertisements. Rihanna's Fenty line of both cosmetics and lingerie is a trailblazer in this fight, as her product lines include diverse models that are unedited, unretouched, and very beautiful. She's also disrupted and changed the cosmetics industry on a large scale in recent years. Until a short time ago, the beauty industry has failed women of color due to not producing shades of foundation and concealer that was inclusive of all skin tones. Rihanna has changed that by releasing a line that has over 50 different shades and making sure that that all women can feel beautiful in her products. But also, with our current fight for media inclusivity, we see more diverse casting in film and TV. Diverse projects like Black Panther, Crazy Rich Asians, Parasite, Hustlers, Minari, Judas and the Black Messiah, and more are becoming major hits and are inciting change in the industry. The model industry is also slowly evolving for the better, even if it's at the pace of a snail. Models like Adut Akek, Andrea Page, Yumi Nu, and many other beautiful faces are making history by promoting more diverse representation in fashion. We still have a long way to go, but hopefully we can continue to fight against the oppressive standards of beauty that are dictated towards us every day, because everyone is worthy of seeing themselves in the media that they consume. At the age of 26, I've already seen and felt the shift in body ideals since the late 90s. I remember thinking that my eyebrows were too bushy and bold and wanting to have the arched, sexy eyebrows of Angelina Jolie when I was 13. Then, suddenly, I was told that natural thick eyebrows were on trend, and all of a sudden, I was getting complimented for something that I was teased about in the past. The ideal of the exaggerated hourglass shape popularized by the Kardashian-Jenner family will inevitably phase out, and then we'll be off to a new trend. Are Kate Moss or Sophia Loren or Louise Brooks or Marilyn Monroe or Halle Berry any less beautiful now that the standard has changed? No, of course not. And Kim Kardashian will still look stunning when we're off to a new ideal. And that is precisely why it is essential to be aware of these cultural shifts and how they shape our own perception of our body image. Next time somebody tells you that you are too skinny or too fat, ask yourself, by what standards? Because society itself doesn't know what it wants. And we wouldn't take advice from someone who is unstable and changing their minds every few minutes. So why should we conform to an unstable, ever-changing society?
All these gorgeous faces that I'm looking at. You know, every one of them. Some are supposedly pretty, some are supposedly not so pretty, but they're all absolutely gorgeous. And everybody's eyes is a piece of jewelry beyond compare. Beautiful.